Hi, this is Bruce Rawls, and I'm talking with Gary Renard and Cindy Laura Renard, and I'm delighted to have another conversation with them. Um, Gary has written several books, and they're all wonderful. If you're listening, you probably know what they are. Disappearance of the Universe, Your Immortal Reality, and Love Has Forgotten No One, and lots of audio programs and great podcasts with Gene Bogart, and lots of great stuff. So I'll dispense with further introductions and let Gary and Cindy give whatever updates they have and announcements, and we'll go from there. How's that sound?
That was great.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's great to be back with you, Bruce, doing this again. I think this is my second time doing the Google Hangout with you.
Uh-huh.
So it's great to be doing it again. And our theme today is going to be the attainment of peace, purpose, process, and practice. But before I get into that, I would like to share with everyone that Gary and I just got back from a major trip to South Korea. And we did our first weekend 2-day workshop there where we were participating and introducing the course there. The course has only been out, I think, a couple years there. And so it's fairly new. Mm-hmm. And Gary's books, though, were published before the course. So a lot of people had the chance to read Gary's book, The Disappearance of the Universe, and his 2 other books before they even got into the course. So they had some understanding of it. But it was an amazing experience. This is our 3rd trip to one of the Asian countries. We went to China in May, and then we've been to Japan and now South Korea.
Wonderful.
And it's been really amazing to see the Asian groups and hear their questions and their concerns, and which we find are the same as everybody else's. And this is what I'm really getting from our travels. No matter where we go, we just find that we're way more alike than we are different. And the people are just incredible. They're so enthusiastic, so welcoming. They have deep thought questions. We spent a lot of time with them and made a lot of new friends. And I just wanted to share that these people are just great. And our experiences there have been nothing less than just amazing. And we feel really, really excited that we're going to be going back quite often to a lot of these countries.
Excellent.
To bring
Excellent.
help with the course there. And so I just wanted to share that. It's been some new things we've been doing.
That's great. And of course, how could there be anything but sameness when we're looking for it from that thought system, huh? That's really the essence of what we all are is we have the same 2 thought systems to choose from and the same decision-making capacity, and we're all in the same boat.
All in the same boat. And I just think there's such a tendency, though, to divide, and to stereotype, other cultures. And then, and you go there and then it's the same. And as you pointed out, why wouldn't it be, and we're all the same, because we do share the same mind, we do share, the part of the mind that has the ego, and we do share the Holy Spirit mind. So, and we all have a decision maker that gets to choose between the 2. And that's why we're the same, and it's just beautiful to be able to experience this, and meet with everyone in person, and get their story and get how the course has impacted their lives. It's just very inspiring. Yeah.
It is.
And, I think we picked the topic, the attainment of peace, today because, well, first of all, it is one of the major goals of the course is the attainment of true peace. So, and the course does talk about the idea that true peace really does come from that place when you really reach the real world. Another way of putting that, the course puts it, the period of achievement is that place in the course and the manual for teachers under the development of trust, where we eventually reach the real world, which is the forgiven world, where all the unconscious guilt in the mind has been healed, has been forgiven. So all that's left is the real world. And everything else disappears. The wrong mind disappears. The guilt, the iceberg of guilt disappears. And what's left is you see, just as the Course says, you just see only the face of Christ everywhere. That's really, when the Course is talking about true peace, that's really the part of the stage that it's talking about. But until we reach the real world, we tend to go back and forth and have glimpses of peace.
Right.
You go back from the wrong mind to the right mind, from to the ego mind to the Holy Spirit mind, and you go back and forth, again, until as you're chipping away layers of the guilt, and then finally you do reach that stage of peace. And, Jesus does say the choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. So the more we're judging, ourselves and other people in situations, we're only reinforcing the guilt and keeping the guilt in place, which makes it more real, for us. And another thing is the need to be right. That's another cause of the loss of peace, is to this need that we have to be right. And the only reason we feel we need to be right, is because we think we're going to lose otherwise. We think we're going to lose something. But what happens is when you choose the Holy Spirit as your teacher, which resides in the right part of your mind, you're gaining everything, and you're really losing nothing.
That's it, isn't it? We give up nothing to gain everything, and but that's not the story that ego presents. It's a bit, just a little bit distorted here and there.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Just a wee bit distorted.
Yeah. Just a wee bit distorted. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what you were saying is so brilliant, because the judgment and the thinking that we need to be right is really based on the idea that somehow there's a separate self that needs defending, and of course the more we look at that and see the folly of it, it's like, well, yeah, there wasn't anything there. And I think that's the beauty of the practice of forgiveness that the Course recommends, that we diligently apply, is that eventually we, like you say, we chip away at it, and pretty soon it's like, oh yeah, and we generalize and realize, oh, that forgiveness opportunity was the same as this one, and all the illusions are the same, and we can actually afford to gently laugh at the silliness of the belief that we can judge. And I think it's also in the manual where it says that the section where it says we'd have to have an inconceivably vast understanding in order to judge anything rightly, and so it's just kind of silly, isn't it? I mean, it's
pretty silly.
Yeah.
We actually believe we can judge.
Yeah.
We're capable of true of judging, that we're actually capable.
Right.
Be aware of just a large amount of information, past, present, future, the whole enchilada, to even be able to judge accurately.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody can do that who's in the position to do that. And I think once you really get that, and really finally ready to let go, really let go of all of it, the whole game of the ego, the whole idea of time, space, being the reality, and finally ready to renounce the world, which that's actually part of the process. That's really is a process. The Course itself is a process, and most people aren't ready yet. Most of us, unless you're a spiritual genius, it's going to be a process, and it's going to take time. It's a lifelong path, really, to get to that place where you can attain that level the Course is talking about.
Right.
And at some point, I'd like to also just go over what the Course's steps on forgiveness, and how Art and Apursa also kind of their companion to that as well. It's so important to reiterate what true forgiveness is and what it can do for the mind. Do you mind if I go through a couple things, or do you want to?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
Please do. Like you say, we can never get too many reminders, right?
Not at all. And I think, and it's interesting, I think a lot of people still have questions about forgiveness, but it's interesting because the forgiveness process is itself very simple. It's just that the ego is so complex and complicated, it wants to make it more difficult. Mm-hmm. But when you're really looking at it, the steps that they are, the truth is simple. And but the Course would say the first step would be identify the cause, then let it go. Second step, third step, so that it can be replaced. But we have to understand what the cause is. When you're identifying cause, the cause, of course, is in the mind, and it's the belief in separation and the choice for separation, and choice to be divided. what goes along with that is it's the choice for attack thoughts in the mind. That's the cause of all our upset and all our disturbance, is that decision to have choose attack thoughts in our own mind, which then we project out. So we identify the cause as being the upset is not outside of us. It's in our choice for guilt in our own mind and the belief in separation. And then we let that, we let it go. And so that it can be replaced by, what it's replaced by is the Holy Spirit, true vision, true perception. And that's the Holy Spirit's job. Our job is the first two steps. And then the Holy Spirit job takes care of the last step. And that's the part where Art and Apursa say you have to trust in the Holy Spirit to do its job. Once you do yours, which is identify the cause and not forgive from the level of the effect, making the world the cause of your problem. You have to be willing to just step back and allow the Holy Spirit to do its part, and you don't have to worry about that part.
Yeah, I like to think of the third part is like the Holy Spirit gently reminding us, step away from that thought system and no one will get hurt, right?
That's right. Yeah. And what I love is Art and Apursa and the Disappearance of the Universe have a wonderful companion to that forgiveness. It's just expanded, and they say the first step, which goes along with identifying the cause, would be to remember that you're dreaming. Remember that it's your dream. You're dreaming the world of time and space. It's all your projection. And so remember you're dreaming. Second step is then forgive both your projected images and yourself for dreaming them.
That's hugely important. Yeah. When I was putting together a book a few years ago, I had in the title, forgiving the dream. And then I realized, no, that's really, still kind of working with the effect. It's got to be forgiving the dreamer. We have to forgive the dreamer. And that was kind of like the aha again. That's like, how could it be anything but that? Because if we don't forgive the dreamer, then we're trying to bark up the wrong tree again, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and then the third step would be, again, an alignment with the Course would be to trust the Holy Spirit and choose His strength. Again, letting it go into God's hands, into the Holy Spirit's hands. And I think part of getting good at forgiveness is developing also what Art and Apursa call a forgiveness attitude. And you do that and you become a master by having forgiving thought processes and practicing that on a daily basis with whatever comes up. That's how you become a master at it. And again, this is something that has to be done, though, and practiced anytime, and learning to recognize anytime something comes up that triggers you, or that when you get upset, even if it's something really mild, something little, treating it the same as something that seems huge, and then applying these forgiveness steps to it, whatever it is.
Right.
And I don't know if you want to add anything to that so far.
Well, yeah, I think it's good that Cindy is talking about forgiveness, because you can't really have a discussion about peace without talking about forgiveness, because it's forgiveness that leads to that peace.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also forgiveness that gives the world a purpose. It's like when people first learn that the world is an illusion, they have a tendency to get bummed out, because it's like, oh, it's just an illusion. It doesn't mean anything. It's empty. It's meaningless. My life is empty and meaningless. What can have purpose in an illusion? My children are illusions. All these goals and dreams that I had, what good are they? What value does anything have? Which is a good question. And it's like people, tend to get kind of bummed out by that, especially energy healers, when they find out that energy isn't real. And I think that what they have to realize is that just because it's an illusion, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a purpose. There is a purpose to it. In fact, I posted a quotation today at Facebook that addresses that from the Manual for Teachers. And Bruce, I noticed you liked the quote at Facebook, so thank you for it.
I do. I did, yes.
But there is a purpose, and this is one of the good features about A Course in Miracles. It doesn't leave you hanging. Like it doesn't just describe the whole problem. It doesn't just give you the ego thought system and leave it there and leave you depressed with nowhere to go.
Just dumpster diving, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Once you look at the ego, it's like, well, now what? Yeah.
Actually, the Course is a lot more proactive than people realize at first. It actually replaces the entire ego thought system with the thought system of the Holy Spirit. So it's like now you've got someplace to go. You have something to replace it with. You have something to undo it with, if you will, since the Course says that salvation is undoing. So the world does have a purpose. And this very brief quote from the manual, it says, until forgiveness is complete, the world does have a purpose. It becomes the home in which forgiveness is born, and where it grows and becomes stronger and more all-embracing. Here it is nourished, for here it is needed. So now the world that you see, and as the Course says, and Cindy mentioned attack thoughts, the Course says, I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. I think it's important to remember that a projection of guilt onto another person, which is what people do all the time, they don't know that they're doing it, they just think they're right. But when you project your unconscious guilt onto somebody else, that is an attack thought. You are actually attacking that person by projecting your unconscious guilt onto them. And the Course says you can escape from the world that you see by giving that up, by giving up projecting guilt, by giving up judgment and condemnation and replacing it with the forgiveness of the Holy Spirit. And when you take on that purpose for the world, then now the world means something in the sense that it can get you home. And it can lead to peace. And, one of the ways that that it's leading to peace and that you're on your way home is that you start to get more of a sense that that illusion is a dream, which is why I think it's important that the Course further refines the idea that the world is an illusion to the idea that the world is a dream that you will awaken from. And it is that awakening that is enlightenment. So now you're progressing from illusion to dream, and you can eventually realize that you're the dreamer. But first you have to realize that it's a dream, or else you can't realize that you're the dreamer. And then you become more aware of the fact that you're dreaming. At one point, the Course says that awareness of dreaming is a function of the miracle worker. So now you remember more often that you're dreaming. Your forgiveness is undoing the ego, giving you more access to spirit. And because of that, you're becoming more aware of the fact that this is a dream that you're walking through, and that it's not even you doing the walking through it, because you're really just mind, and you're seeing this projection with your mind, and the body doesn't really have anything to do with you eventually. It's like, it's just a part of the dream. It's just a part of the same projection that everything else is. And you start to realize that you're weightless. Well, not at first, it's a process. I think that we have to be prepared for a higher life form, because being human is not the same as being spirit. Spirit is a higher life form. God is not human. God is a higher life form, and so are we. But I think that to really experience that all the time, we would have to be prepared for it. And that's exactly what the Course does. That's exactly what forgiveness does. It prepares us to experience this higher life form and to graduate to a condition of perfect oneness. And it's hard to do that without fear. So part of the Course is to undo that fear, undo the fear of God that we didn't even know that we had. It's like the last two obstacles to peace in the Course are the fear of death and the fear of God. But we wouldn't have one without the other. If we weren't afraid of God, we wouldn't be afraid of death either. Because there is no death, as the Course says. There is no death, but there is the belief in death. And part of what we're undoing is the belief in the world. It's our belief in it that makes it real to us and gives it power over us. And what we want to do is undo that belief, undo that grip that the world has on us, and put that belief where it belongs, which is why the Course says, be vigilant only for God and his kingdom. Now, I'll grant you that's a pretty tall order to be vigilant only for God and his kingdom. If you could do that all the time, you'd be like Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jesus says in the Course, eventually I just listened to one voice. You know, he just listened to the voice of the Holy Spirit, and he was vigilant only for God and his kingdom. And a lot of these ideas in the Course are kind of like challenging us to come up to his level. And that's a pretty high level. You can say that the bar is set pretty high there. And if you could be vigilant for God and his kingdom all the time, you'd be like Jesus, and you'd be out of here pretty quick. And that's what the Course is training our mind to do. And it is doable. It's not easy, but the Holy Spirit wouldn't give us a job that wasn't doable. It is possible. So I think the Course students ultimately are aspiring to a very high level. And that's why this is not the easiest spiritual path in the world. It does ask a lot of you mentally. It doesn't ask anything of you physically, and it doesn't ask you to sacrifice anything. It doesn't ask you to give up anything in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You can live a normal life. It doesn't ask you to save the world. You know, that's the Holy Spirit's job. You don't have to save the world, but you do have to play your part in saving the world. At one point, I get a kick out of this line in the Course that asks, can the world be saved without you? And the answer is no. You know, if you're, or at least think you're part of the dream, then you have to be saved in order for the world to be saved.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to play your part in doing that, which is forgiveness, which the Course teaches is your only responsibility in this whole mess that you appear to be in. So you forgive whatever, you know, comes up, whatever comes up in front of your face. You know, Donald Trump comes on the TV, there's an opportunity. You know, you can forgive, or you can judge it and make it real and stay stuck here forever. And you can't escape from the world you see by giving up the projections, by giving up your attack thoughts. But it takes discipline. And, you know, a lot of discipline comes from habits. When the Course says miracles are habits, a lot of it is, you know, who are you in the habit of thinking with? Are you in the habit of thinking with the ego, or are you in the habit of thinking with the Holy Spirit? And if you can get into the habit of thinking with the ego, then you also have the ability to get into the habit of thinking with the Holy Spirit. And the more you get into that habit, the more you'll do it, and the more you would miss it if you didn't do it. So a lot of it is, you know, kind of like a retraining of the mind, kind of like a reprogramming, if you will, or an unprogramming of the ego. And the more you do it, it kind of like grows on itself, and you get more used to doing it. And I think eventually, I think eventually you do become more aware that you're dreaming. The body starts to feel lighter, and the world doesn't seem quite so heavy, and the things that happen in it don't seem quite as important. And you might think that that would make you function less effectively in the world. Actually, just the opposite is true, because you can think more clearly. If you're thinking with the Holy Spirit and you're becoming more peaceful, then you can think more clearly. You're more open to inspiration. You can be guided actually as to how to do things better in the world. So you talk about a win-win situation. It's like you can have your life, you can have a better life, and you'll enjoy it more because there's less guilt in your mind. And then on top of all of that, you're awakening in God. So, you know, what more could you ask for?
You know, that's, Gary mentioned the lesson in A Course in Miracles, lesson 23, I can escape the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. And I just wanted to read a couple paragraphs from that, because this basically says it all. This is part of forgiveness right here, and understanding, you know, what, again, that first step, identifying the cause, this is part of where that comes from in the Course. And this is Jesus, of course, speaking. And he's saying the idea for today contains the only way out of fear that will ever succeed. Nothing else will work. Everything else is meaningless. But this way cannot fail. Every thought you have makes up some segment of the world you see. It is with your thoughts, then, that we must work, if your perception of the world is to be changed. If the cause of the world you see is attack thoughts, you must learn that it is these thoughts which you do not want. There is no point in lamenting the world. There's no point in trying to change the world. It is incapable of change because it is merely an effect. But there is indeed a point in changing your thoughts about the world. Here, you are changing the cause. The effect will change automatically. So the world you see is a vengeful world, and everything in it is a symbol of vengeance. Each of your perceptions of external reality is a pictorial representation of your own attack thoughts. One can well ask if this can be called seeing. Is not fantasy a better word for such a process? And hallucination a more appropriate term for the result? So you see the world that you have made, but you do not see yourself as the image maker. You cannot be saved from the world, but you can escape from its cause. This is what salvation means. For where is the world you see when its cause is gone? And so this is all part of understanding that what the cause is. Again, he's talking about these attack thoughts. And the Holy Spirit helps us to escape the world we see by helping us to reverse our thinking, the faulty thinking with the ego, and helping us to unlearn our mistakes, unlearn the mistaken thinking, which is the choice for the ego as our teacher. And I love this lesson because it's really says it all. It's right to the point.
It's a great
and
one.
The lesson, yeah, and it goes right along with this inspiration that I received a couple of years ago, which I felt was from Jesus. It was like a download that I received, and I just want to share that too, because it's kind of in alignment with what I just read about the thoughts being the cause of all suffering and all pain.
Yes,
and
please.
What I heard was, and I like to share this with our audiences because it was just such a profound moment for me when I felt this download come in, and it was really, really, really kind of nice, and but it was a download, and the voice said, it wasn't really a voice, but it was like sort of like you can hear the words in your mind. And it said, the reason why I'm not coming back is because I never left. That's when I thought, oh, it sounds like Jesus talking here. The reason I'm not coming back is because I never left. I live within you. Treat everyone that you meet on any given day as though they were me, not because I'm special, but because you're all so magnificent. And anytime that you feel any pain or suffering, no matter what form it takes, remember it's the thoughts that are causing you the pain. And you can decide for a new thought. You have a choice. Ask yourself, is this thought bringing me joy or is it bringing me pain? And then you can make another decision. You can choose again.
Exactly.
And then thought by thought, remember the truth. Step by step, thought by thought. Right-minded thought by right-minded thought by right-minded thought. Remember the truth. And then that's pretty much it. It was just this beautiful but simple kind of message, right to the point. But it reminded me that the truth is very simple. The Course's message, the truth is not complicated. And again, it just takes so much undoing for this ego, which is all of us as one, having chosen the ego as our teacher. It's quite a process to undo that. What we've all been
like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think there's so much resistance to practicing this kind of true forgiveness because we're being blocked by these attack thoughts that are blocking us from choosing the teacher in our right mind, the Holy Spirit. But I think when we start to learn to associate, this is kind of getting more into psychology now, but when you associate the pain and fear and guilt with the attack thoughts you're choosing, then you start to understand that how you feel comes from what you think.
Exactly. The causality is obvious when you look
at
it, huh?
Yeah. That's when you start to understand that, okay, well, that every time I'm feeling bad, there's an attack thought attached to it if I really look at it. And I think, and what is resistance except for an unconscious attempt to sabotage what alone will help us?
Exactly.
That's really what resistance is.
Yeah.
The ego doesn't want us to be helped. The ego, because it's based on separation, making the world real, making attack real, making condemnation, pain, suffering, making all that part of our identity.
Yeah, kind of fits in with what you were talking about earlier in the teacher's manual, in the development of trust, that that last stage before we get to the attainment of peace is really where sometimes it seems like a dark night of the soul, where we realize, after we've practiced forgiveness a while, we realize, well, we've got to forgive the idea that there's a separate self that needs to do the forgiving, and that's where it comes into a situation where if we really want to truly be peaceful and forgive the whole enchilada, we have to forgive the belief that there's a separate self there as well somehow.
Yeah. Yes.
And that takes, and like it says in there, it could take a very long time, but fortunately each step is so heavily reinforced, and we like, and I love, what you and Art and Persa say is, it's every single thing that comes up in front of our face is a perfect forgiveness opportunity at every moment, and to just look at and say, oh yeah, I could forgive that too. I can generalize this. I could take myself and everyone with me home by looking at the shared interests, and how can I be kind to myself, as a capital S self, by realizing there is no other, and anything that I think about someone else, I'm thinking about myself. And if I see another favorite exercise from Fearless Love, if I see all of spirit in everyone, then I'm seeing that in myself when I remember to do that.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've really been emphasizing the last couple of years since Love Has Forgotten No One, is the idea of not making it real, because you literally can't forgive if you're making it real. In fact, at one point the Course says you have made it real, and so you cannot forgive it. It's important to have a basic understanding of the Course's fundamental metaphysics in order to be able to really do the Course and really be able to understand the kind of forgiveness that the Course is teaching. So the Course emphasizes that forgiveness does not pardon sins and make them real. If you're making it real, you're making it real in your mind, which is the opposite of forgiveness. So it's important to get the things that the Course is saying, that what we're saying is not true, that it's a dream. We're not forgiving people because they really did something. We're forgiving people because they've done nothing, which is a way for us to understand that we've done nothing, which is why we're innocent. There's another really big misperception that has been slowly creeping into the Course in Miracles community the last couple of years. And that is that somehow, in the end, that the world's going to continue. Okay, we're still going to maintain our individuality, but we're going to be like light beings, because everything is going to be forgiven, and we're going to be going around seeing spirit everywhere. But people will still retain that individuality and personal existence, which is really just a separation idea, and really just an attempt by people to cling to individuality and individual identity, and to be immortal as some kind of a body.
Right.
And that is not what the Course is teaching. In fact, the quotation that I used earlier from the Manual for Teachers, it's from question number 14. The question is, how will the world end? Not how will the world seem to go on with everyone maintaining some kind of form. The question is, how will the word end, E-N-D, over. And at the bottom it says, the world will end when its thought system has been completely reversed. So that's a process. So when that workbook lesson says, I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts, it doesn't mean that you're not going to still see the world at first. You're still going to see bodies, you're still going to see images, you're still going to see a world out there, but your understanding of it is changing. And the hold that it used to have on you is being let go. And you're slowly but surely letting go of the world. And then, yes, the time will come when for you the world is completely over, because your ego has been completely undone and you can awaken. But what you awaken to is not a different version of this world. It has nothing to do with this world. This world has to be undone. It does not have to be changed or transformed except in your experience. And yes, in your experience, it will become a dream, and it will cease to affect you. And then eventually you'll be in a position where you can awaken to God's kingdom without fear. And when that comes, you will awaken to God's kingdom. And yes, the world will disappear. The world will end. And, I see Course students sometimes on the internet now saying, Well, the universe is not going to disappear as some people think. The universe is going to continue, but it will be it's going to be God's kingdom on earth or something.
Which is kind of a sidestep sachet to another ego strategy to, well, let's keep it real, but prettify it. Let's do interior decorating on the dumpster, right?
Yes, and it's true. The world does become holy in your mind, and you are seeing like the Holy Spirit now.
Right.
You are seeing oneness everywhere. At one point, the Course says, everywhere the Holy Spirit looks, he sees himself. So now you're thinking like the Holy Spirit. That's how you return to spirit, because the Course teaches that mind is the activating agent of spirit. You activate spirit in your mind by choosing it. Mm-hmm. So now you're choosing, once again, as the Course says, you're choosing oneness and spirit everywhere without exception. And eventually you will get in touch with your own divinity by seeing it everywhere. And when you do, what you awaken to is heaven. As the Course defines it, the awareness of perfect oneness and the knowledge that there is nothing else, which is another line that Course students should remember. There is nothing else. The awareness of perfect oneness and the knowledge that there is nothing else outside of this oneness, nothing else within. And I think it's important to put the whole thing together and realize the Course's metaphysics in order to really apply forgiveness in the first place. And it's that forgiveness that leads to peace and the awareness of dreaming. And it all fits together right down the road to where you finally awaken to God.
That is such a good point that we have to remember. That's why we keep stressing forgiveness, and why we always stress forgiveness, because it does lead to peace. And actually, there's another part, and this is in The Disappearance of the Universe. I wanted to read.
I don't have Gene Bogart's applause sound effects.
That's right. We need the sound effects. We need the bells and whistles.
Really? I'll just do the thumbs up and
thumbs up.
Gene and I just recorded another podcast.
Oh, good. I always look forward to those.
You'll be ready really soon.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I again, what goes along with all of this is there's a quote that Art Nampersa chose in The Disappearance of the Universe. And I want to read this because a lot of people are tempted, all of us, always, tend to buy into the temptation sometimes to, again, make the cause of our upset something outside of us. It's because we have chosen to see the guilt in somebody else rather than our own minds. So this is just a wonderful reminder that whenever temptation comes up, to blame something outside of you, again, for the cause of any disturbance. Jesus is saying, there's a very simple way to find the door to true forgiveness and perceive it open wide and welcome. When you feel that you are tempted to accuse someone of sin in any form, and remember, sin is just the idea of separation. So when you're tempted to accuse someone of sin in any form, do not allow your mind to dwell on what you think he did, for that is self-deception. Ask instead, would I accuse myself of doing this? Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes in the whole course.
Isn't that a gem? I love that one too. That because that's really basically putting the responsibility and the opportunity for the peace that we were talking about here to really happen. Because if we can, bring it back to the locus of the mind, it's like, oh, I get to choose whether or not to be happy or peaceful. Yeah, isn't that great?
Remember that this is part of the whole point. Is the ego's goal is to make us forget we have a mind, or we can choose. But here we're being reminded that it always comes back to a choice in our mind, remembering that we have a mind and we can choose. We get to decide how we look at things, how we feel. We get to decide that. And then Art Nampersa go on to say, instead of accusing yourself, remember that their call for love, when someone appears to be attacking you, their call for love is your call for love.
Bingo.
And you should be grateful to them, they say, for you need them as much as they need you. Without those images, they say, you see, and the miracle, which is a shift in perception, you'd never be able to find a way out. So you need those images because they're showing you what's in your own mind that needs to be forgiven and healed. And then what the Holy Spirit promises us, the peace of the Holy Spirit, since we're talking about peace here, the peace of the Holy Spirit will be given to you if you do your job. He will heal the larger unconscious mind that is hidden from you and give you his peace at the same time. But they're saying that the peace might not always look like it comes right away to you,
Right.
but it will eventually. I mean, and if you trust in the process, the peace might come in the form of something that used to upset you or bother you or push your buttons. It's gone.
Exactly.
It doesn't have any power over you.
And to use your previous metaphor, it's sort of like if you just forgive one little ice cube, then huge amounts of the underwater portion of the iceberg are being dissolved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. You just chip away. I mean, anytime you're practicing forgiveness, a little chunk of that iceberg of guilt is being deleted and it's really being wiped out till eventually the whole iceberg gets less and less and less and less. And it's like it's melting, literally melting away. Like as that beautiful passage at the end of, I think it's Your Mortal Reality, when our person join as the voice of the Holy Spirit as one. And they say, all your grievances and mistakes, they just melt away as snow into a burning fire. There's no more guilt, no more karma, no more fear of what may be. You know, for you have met yourself. You know, and you're finally, you come to yourself, you know, and there's such a beautiful part in the attainment of the real world in the Course where Jesus is talking about what that's like when everything is just let go and you're ready you're just right before the gates of heaven, where God himself at the end kind of lifts you unto himself. The very last step, when everything else washes away and everything is wiped out. There's nothing left, to be attached to. And it's so beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Section.
Yeah. I'm going to read that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really, it's a tearjerker. I mean, if you really are, when you really listen to those words, it's so poetic and beautiful. When he's saying there's no more visions of people walking separately, no buildings where people going, there's no time when night grows dim and then day, it's just, there's no separation. And you just get to that place.
It's the true community that I think Ken Wapnick was talking about in one of his last audios, the community of love. It's not anything outside. It's not people or physical gatherings. It's we're seeing that we're all one being, and that perfect oneness has no exceptions and no exclusions and no we have to leave this person or this group of people out or whatever. It's totally all inclusive. So guilt, individuality, space and time. I kind of like that acronym of GIST. Any of those things, there's no place in perfect oneness for those aspects of the dream, are there?
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. I think it might be helpful to just give an example of for people, let's say someone is appearing to attack you.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a partner, your spouse, it could be a friend, whatever, colleague, a coworker, whatever it is. But let's say someone's getting really angry and it's clear they're projecting also. And then the moment, and then you start to feel that anger building up in you, or that fear, or that whatever building up in you.
Uh-huh.
I think everyone has had that experience when someone appears to be attacking you in whatever form. You get this feeling in your gut, like in your solar plexus, and it just doesn't feel good. You already know that something's that anger, which it really comes from fear. The fear is building within you. In that moment, a step would be to recognize of how you feel. Pay attention to your mood. Recognize when you are even mildly disturbed or upset, and when you can really look at that, remind yourself that's the moment you want to practice stop reacting. Choosing the ego as your teacher in reaction to what the other person is doing. So that's your opportunity right there, when that feeling builds up within you, when someone else appears to be attacking you. That's when you want to catch it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, by how you feel when you're being triggered.
Right.
And remind yourself, that's when you want to remind yourself, remember that you're dreaming. There's no one really outside of you attacking you. Right. And this is a really, I think, important point. When you perceive someone as attacking you, even if they do appear, when you perceive someone as attacking you, what that's really saying is that you believe that you deserve to be attacked.
Right.
Because you see what you want to see,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in other people. So when you perceive them as attacking, you're enforcing that in your own mind, saying, well, I must have attacked first. You know, I held some attack thought in my mind. Now I'm choosing to see the attack in someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the point, to catch it. And this is the part where it can be really difficult to practice. And then we're not saying it's easy to do this. We're just saying, but you can get better and better at it.
Yes.
You know, the more you do, it's a process,
Mm-hmm.
but the more you do practice catching it, when you catch your own ego in action, you can turn the tables on it. And even if you can't do it in the moment, you can just come back to it later. Just bring up the situation in your mind. You can still practice forgiveness later. You know, even if you don't remember to in the moment, you know, and you can do the steps of forgiveness, you know, at any time.
Yeah, and sometimes it's I think important to remember, like you say, you can come back to it later when you realize that you're, you know, bringing that back into mind is the perfect opportunity in those moments to just say, oh yeah, now I could see this differently. I could choose to you know, listen to a different teacher and listen to the inner kindness teacher, aka Holy Spirit, you know, Jesus of the Course, and say, oh yeah, your your de-interpretation works. You know, my interpretation as this separate self, you know, was not getting me where, you know, it wasn't working for me.
Yeah. And I think it's just, it's something to a process where it's helpful to remember to laugh. Sometimes I feel we don't even stress that enough, that we can make the world so real and hard and heavy for ourselves when we don't remember to lighten up. Mm-hmm. And just laugh at the silliness, right? Just the silliness of the tiny mad idea thought that we could actually, you know, that we actually make this idea of separation, you know, more real for us. It's in just whatever it takes for you to laugh, just to remember that is so important. And it doesn't cost anything.
It doesn't.
I mean, it's free.
Yeah.
And it's like whatever it takes, whether it's even watching a funny movie or, you know, just something that gets you just to sit back and chill a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
And, you know, it's always good to remind people, like, if you have a job to do, or, you know, part of your job is analysis, which, and of course, analysis makes everything real. And maybe it's part of your job to be right. You know, it's okay to do your job. After a while, you know, when you realize that the whole thing is a projection that is coming from you and that it's your dream, you know, the dream is not being dreamed by somebody else. You know, this is your dream. You are the dreamer, and you're not the dream. You know, most people think that they are the dream and that everything in the dream is real, including them and their bodies and the whole thing. As you begin to realize that that's not true, you can still participate. You know, it's like when I go into a movie theater, I know that it's not real. I know that the movie isn't real, but that doesn't stop me from enjoying it. And I can still enjoy the movie. I know it's not real, and I can still enjoy it, and I can still have a good time. And that's what this movie can be like, because it's very much like a movie. Shakespeare was right. You know, the world is a stage, and each must play his part. I don't think of myself as really being Gary. You know, I think of myself as being an actor in a movie playing the part of Gary. And I know the lines. You know, and the truth is we all know the lines, whether we realize it or not, because everything that we're going to say in this lifetime has already been determined. You know, so we already know the lines, and we're going to say our lines, and we're going to play the part. And you just don't have to be stuck in it. You know, that's the difference. You're looking at it, as the Course would describe it, as above the battleground. You know, now it doesn't have that hold over you. You're above the battleground. You can watch it at the same time that it looks like you're there, but you know that you're not really there, and it changes everything. So
it does.
Yeah, when the Course says seek not to change the world, seek rather to change your mind about the world, we're focusing now on the cause instead of the effect, and that's really the only difference. And as Cindy quoted earlier from that workbook lesson, you know, the effect will change automatically. You don't have to worry about that. If you change what's in the projector in a movie theater, what's on the screen will take care of itself, you know, because it simply is an effect of what's in the projector. So now we're focusing on the cause, which is mind. The Course says this is a course in cause and not effect. So the effect will take care of itself. You don't have to worry about that. It's kind of like if you're coming from a place of abundance, because you know that the Course says that a sense of separation from God is the only lack you really need correct. Right? If you're working on correcting that one real lack, which is a sense of separation from God and from everything, then perhaps the screen will eventually change to one of abundance. I know that mine did, because I always came from a place of lack almost my whole life until I got to the Course. Now, there's a big caveat there, and that is that I can't promise you that if you do the Course that everything's going to go good. You know, you look at Jesus at the end of his life, things weren't exactly going good. You know, the point is with him, it didn't matter. And it's going to get to the point with us where it doesn't matter because the world can't affect us. The Course says about forgiveness, it denies the ability of anything not of God to affect you. You can actually get to that point. And how important are your problems when you get to that point where they can't affect you? What if there was no pain associated with that problem? Is the problem, or is it the pain that is associated with that problem and the stress and the anxiety and all those things that are associated with that problem? That's the problem. It's not the problem itself. And if you could be free of those things, then it wouldn't matter what happened in the world, which is absolute heresy to the ego.
Right.
Because the ego wants everything to be important. Of course it's important what happens. What are you talking about? Of course it's important that I get what I want. You know, I'm not going to give that up. I'm going to win. I'm number one. You know, and it's like, you know, all that nonsense. And the time can come when, even though you appear to be, you know, playing your part, maybe even trying to win. I mean, if you're a professional baseball player, I don't expect you to not try to win. It's just that you know better. You know that it's all BS. You know that it's all made up. And that's the difference. Now it doesn't have a hold on you, and you're looking at it with the Holy Spirit instead of the ego.
Yeah, there's got to be a place where we come to the realizations that, you know, looking at it the way ego wants to look at it just doesn't serve us anymore. And it's like, well, okay, as long as I go down that road, you know, it's the peace is not there. But the instant we start looking with shared interests and you know, the intention to be kind, that turns everything around, which means we're listening to the other teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
seeing that inclusion and seeing, you know, separate interest as being a like you say, a silly idea, you know, just it becomes laughable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. And I think one of the hardest things to remember when the stuff hits the fan is that, again, it's hard to remember to see other people appearing to attack you as really a call for love.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, people are always doing one of two things. They're either calling out for love or expressing love.
Right.
And the response would be love to both things.
Keeps it simple, doesn't it?
It seems so simple, doesn't it? You know, and why don't we do it then if it seems so simple? And I know everybody's in the same boat here. It's not always easy in the moment, though, to remember that they're just calling out for love. So my response, the proper response, would be love. And when the thing is when you get yourself in a place where you're choosing love first in your own mind, then you can be in a place where you can then extend that love to that person. But you have to choose it first, or else you're automatically going to default to the ego.
Right.
Because the ego's voice is the loudest. It speaks the loudest. So you always default to the ego until you train the mind, which what the Course helps us do. It helps us to train the mind to be in a miracle state of readiness, to be able to automatically choose the miracle, choose forgiveness, choose love in your mind first. You know, until we get to that point, we will suffer, you know, and but it's very hard to remember, but you get better and better at it. Again, part of the practice of attaining this peace is to practice this kind of forgiveness day in and day out, noticing that classroom is in session whenever you feel even the mildest disturbance. It's like, okay, this is my opportunity. It doesn't have to be even judged as bad, but I think what most of us tend to do, we just judge things as it's like it's bad or it's wrong. But what if it's not bad or wrong? What if that's judgment? What if it's just an opportunity for us to choose again, and which will help reinforce the Holy Spirit's thought system in our own minds.
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand with recognizing, as you pointed out earlier, that if everything really is a projection of our unconscious guilt, by default, by ego's default, then looking at that without condemnation, realizing what appears to be someone else's issue is really my forgiveness opportunity to forgive the dreamer again, and see, oh yeah, I could forgive myself and let us both off the hook. Whoever the other, quote unquote, appears to be at any moment, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how purposive it is, as we were talking about earlier, that it really is, a purposive smokescreen to keep us mindless. That really is what the Course is directing us to look at, and to say, oh, I could look at the contents of my mind, see where I'm trying to reinforce and sabotage the very victimhood that is keeping me miserable and keeping me from peace. But every time that I see my interests as separate from someone else's, or see myself as a victim, or see myself as the effect of the world rather than the cause. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and one thing I want to mention to people is that you don't have to forgive the good stuff.
Right.
It's like when we were in China, we realized that because of their background, a lot of the people there think that you have to forgive all the good stuff as well as all the bad stuff. So then they have to forgive a beautiful sunset because it's an illusion. You don't really have to do that. You notice that the Course focuses on the negative emotions.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it makes such a big deal out of the fact that anger is never justified.
Right.
It's talking about giving up judgment and condemnation and your projections of unconscious guilt onto other people who appear to be in the dream. And the Course is actually quite specifically, it says that if you're with somebody and there's nothing to forgive and you're having a good time, what you should do is celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the happy dream. This is not the suffering sacrificial Jesus that we've been given growing up. It's okay to have a good time. It's okay to enjoy life. It's just that when forgiveness is called for, when you catch yourself, judging and projecting unconscious guilt, the thing is to realize that what you're projecting that unconscious guilt onto and what you don't like about what you're seeing out there is actually what the Course would call the secret sins and hidden hates that you really have about yourself, that you have chosen to see out there on the screen.
Right.
And then forgiving it, realizing that the one who is really going to be forgiven is you. And if you understand that, then you're doing A Course in Miracles, and you can replace that image in your mind with the attitude that what is out there is perfect oneness and innocence. So, we really had to stress that in China. You don't have to worry about the good stuff. You want to forgive the negative emotions that come up and the negative feelings that are a result of the negative thoughts. And that's what you want to focus on forgiving. And by the way, when it comes to Asia, I just want to mention that this whole thing has been a totally new development. Just the last year and a half, all of a sudden, we're in Asia quite a bit. And it's been very interesting to see this. We went to Japan, about almost a year and a half ago. And that's when it really started. And we're going to be going back to all these places. I went to Taiwan in August. I'm pretty sure it looks like we're going back to both Taiwan and Hong Kong. Just got back last week from South Korea. It looks like we're going back there. We're going back to the mainland in November. And they've asked us to come twice a year. So it looks like, the Course is getting a strong foothold in Asia. And I'm fortunate enough that my books came out either right at the same time or just before or just after. And we're getting a lot of invites. And it's really interesting to see the Course when it's first starting out somewhere, because people don't have all these, notions about it and all these, hang-ups about it and beliefs about it because it's new. And it gives us the chance to kind of like explain it to people and say, well, this is what the Course is saying. And my books are there to do that too. And man, if you told me a couple of years ago that this was going to happen I wouldn't have thought so. I didn't see it coming at all, which is why it's fun to work with the Holy Spirit, because you just never know what's right around the corner. The Holy Spirit can see everything, and we can't. But all that we have to do is play our part. We don't have to take on the Holy Spirit's function. We don't have to take on a function that is not ours. All that we do is try to listen to the Holy Spirit, be guided, and play our part. And I'll tell you, it's really interesting, and sometimes it's a lot of fun.
It is indeed. Well, I think we've just about gone about an hour. Is it anything in terms of closing comments or announcements or anything like that? You've already kind of made a little bit of an announcement about your Asian, continuing Asian tours. Anything else you'd like to mention?
I would just like to just remind people, and this is part of my own reminder. When I remind people things, it's about me too. I remind myself as I reinforce it in my own mind. But just to persevere and don't give up on. Yeah. I know all of us have like big challenges that we go through, and they feel harder and they feel bigger sometimes. And it can be what feels like a slow burn forgiveness opportunity. And when that happens, stay with it. Just want to remind people that because your forgiveness is doing something, whether you can see the results or not, or even if you feel it or not, you just trust that it's doing something. And the Holy Spirit is taking your forgiveness, and it's like it's holding it until the mind is ready to accept it. So I think it's just important to remember that no matter how difficult things can get sometimes, if you just practice anyway, and just persevere. Again, this is for your own well-being, and forgiveness, as we said earlier, it's always about self-forgiveness. You're really forgiving yourself, because there is only one mind, only one of us. And we just have to, it looks like we have to appear to forgive other people, because that's where we're seeing the hatred is outside of us, and the fear, which hatred comes from fear, and the guilt and the pain and all that. So I just want to encourage people to keep going. And again, sometimes you'll see the results, but sometimes you might not right away, but don't let it stop you.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think in line with that, I would like to remind people, just be yourself. Don't worry about what somebody else is doing. Don't compare your experience to somebody else's. Don't compare your path to somebody else's. Don't say, oh, wow, this person's doing more than me, or this person's more spiritually advanced than me, or anything like that. Just be yourself and try to be helpful. Think of that saying in the text of the Course, very early, page 28, I am here only to be truly helpful. And if you're practicing forgiveness, you're being helpful. I mean, you are making a contribution to the healing of the mind. If you're kind to people, you are being helpful, because you're coming from the right part of your mind, you're working with the Holy Spirit. And if you're doing that, if you're being helpful, then you're playing your part, and you don't have to compare yourself. You don't have to be a great teacher. You don't have to be Ken Wapnick. You don't have to be, this great universal force. All that you have to do is play your part, and think with the Holy Spirit, practice forgiveness, which is your only responsibility. And if you do that, you are being helpful, and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And so is everybody else. I love, John Lennon, all you need is love. There's nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're where you're supposed to be. And the real choice, the real power that you have is to choose the Holy Spirit instead of the ego and see things right. And if you do that, then you're making a contribution. You're being helpful. And that's really all you have to do.
That's it, isn't it? That's it. That's
all
exactly
you need is love.
That's really it.
Love.
I was just thinking, when you said universal force, I was thinking, well, what the Holy Spirit's true forgiveness really is undoing the universal farce that in a fake universe.
That's a good one.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Gary and Cindy. I've been talking with Gary Renard and Cindy Laura Renard, and I'll post this on ACI blog and other places. And thank you so much for sharing this hour with us.
Oh, thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Look forward to more.
Yes, we
Absolutely.
do too. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Ciao.